Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Don't just throw a tailgate. Own the tailgate with a Bojangles Big Bow Box. Because only Bojangles puts tailgate-ready fresh, never frozen, honey barbecue or buffalo bone-in wings with fall-off-the-bone juiciness right in the pocket. The only way to make these wings any better? With some made-from-scratch buttery biscuits, flavorful fixins, and freshly steeped legendary iced tea. So let the quarterback do the throwing, you do the winning. Because how can you expect to win the game if you don't win the tailgate? Bojangles, it's bow time.
Boutique Air in Muscle Shoals, Alabama offers direct flights to Atlanta and Pensacola. Boutique Air service runs twice daily, 7 days a week with fares starting at $59. Follow Boutique Air Muscle Shoals on Facebook at Boutique Air MSL and book your flight through boutiqueair.com. Boutique Air,
where you can fly private for the cost of commercial.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the legal services performed by other lawyers. My wife and I sat down with Harlan Mitchell and discussed our own estate planning needs. I know in our experience, Harlan brought up questions that caused us to think about our current situation and what we need to do moving forward. When you sit down with Harlan for your free consultation, you're going to find out things that you may have not thought about when it comes to estate planning. I encourage you to go to BamaEstatePlanning.com or give Harlan Mitchell a call at 256-216-9884 and schedule your free consultation today.
Experience the difference at Athens Bible School. The vision and purpose is to provide each student a quality education in a Christ-centered environment to develop the whole person spiritually, mentally, physically, and socially in safe and supportive surroundings. The solid biblical foundation permeates learning and culture in the classrooms and every extracurricular activity.
Hey everybody, this is Daryl Worley, and you're listening to The Mark White Show. Hey, step up and make a difference like he does.
This whole world is full of hurt and pain. A little sunshine and a whole lot of rain. It don't take much to drive those clouds away. Let's all do something good today. You never know what someone's going through. Don't underestimate what you can do. A friendly smile's a tiny price to pay. Let's all do something good today.
Welcome to another edition of the Mark White Show. I am glad that you could join us today. I am again at Harlan D. Mitchell Legal Services, LLC in Athens, Alabama. You can check out Harlan Mitchell at BamaEstatePlanning.com. Right now, I have on the line with me Shelia Champion with the Good Earth LLC in Hazel Green, Alabama. Welcome to the Mark White Show, Shelia Champion.
Thank you, Mark. Glad to be here.
I was reading about the Good Earth LLC, and one of the things, of course, on your Facebook, you say it was formed to educate, empower, and encourage people to take control of the bodies of their loved ones at the time of death. What is your background to have the Good Earth LLC?
Actually, it was just a series of events throughout my life. I had a phobia of death as a young person and got over that when my mother died. And seeing her in her casket, the first person I'd ever viewed, was like a wash of peace came over me. And then I also believe that phobias cause fascination. So through the years, I was fascinated with reading about death and burial and whatever happens and how do you do it and so forth. So that kind of led to my getting interested in this when I started reading about green burial grounds throughout the United States.
Now, when we talk about green burial grounds, what is that exactly?
In a green burial ground or a green burial of any kind, the body is not embalmed. Embalming fluid adds poisons, if you will, to the earth. So there's no embalming, no heavy traditional type caskets. If you want a plain pine box or a plain wooden casket with no varnish or harmful paint on it, that's fine. And there's no vault. A vault is simply used in a cemetery, so it's easier to mow and maintain the levelness of the cemetery. So those three things basically make it green. Also, the body can be wrapped or shrouded in like a cotton sheet using only natural fabrics, cotton, wool, linen, and so forth. And that's what makes it green.
One of the biggest things, Sheila, that I felt like talking to you about the Good Earth LLC is to open up the door for people to have options when it comes to burial of their loved ones.
Absolutely. I started my cemetery on three tenets, the first being family involvement. A lot of times families have the body whisked away to the funeral home and you only get to spend maybe an hour with the body. You don't really get to experience what has really happened. The second was to save people money, and the third was to help save the environment.
And your involvement in hospice care, you have seen death firsthand, obviously. Families can really have issues when it comes to how they want their loved one to be taken care of after death, and it can become a very complicated situation very quickly.
It absolutely can. Unfortunately, not enough people realize that now in the state of Alabama, it is perfectly legal for families to keep possession of their deceased loved one and prepare their body for burial, take the body out to the cemetery where they're going to bury them, put them in the ground. They can dig the grave. They can cover the grave. Now, of course, each cemetery has its own rules as to whether they'll allow that. But at the Good Earth, you are welcome to help dig and cover the body if you want. At the end, close the grave. So that's a way of getting the family involvement to care for that body. A lot of times, for instance, hospice is a perfect example of where this works well, because you know the patient is going to die eventually, so you can prepare this and have it in mind what you want to do. Then you can bathe the body, create your own rituals. If you want to use essential oils, burn candles, play music, whatever your belief system is. No judgment on how you do it, because you're doing it the way you want to and how you honor your loved one.
And we talked about this before the start of the interview, Sheila, that we get in our minds that things have to be done a certain way, and we're programmed to think that. And so anything that's slightly different or a variation can sometimes throw people off.
It absolutely can. We've all been programmed, as you said, to accept what traditional funerals and burials are. But if you stop and think for a minute, this is just going back to the way it was before funeral homes came around. Actually, embalming started during the Civil War when they wanted to get the soldiers' bodies back home to their loved ones and try to preserve the body so it will be in somewhat shape to get it home. And that technique of embalming revolutionized the funeral industry. It then became a funeral parlor, which a lot of times was the home that the mortician lived in, and that became the norm. So from the early or mid, rather, 1800s, it has evolved to what, until the last few years, we've seen as this is the way we do it. And now in the last, I've started my cemetery. I bought the property in 2015, was open in 2016, and was the first in Alabama to do this. So it's still trying to break that tradition and let everyone know, including coroners, police departments, doctors, people who have it ingrained in their mind that we have to do this a certain way. I've worked with the Bureau of Vital Statistics in order to get death certificate changes so people that don't use a funeral home can get those completed. It's been a learning process for myself as well as everyone else.
And for people listening, so there is no confusion, what we're talking about is families having a place to bury their loved ones that does not require the use of a funeral home, no need to embalm for viewings, no need for a casket, no need for a vault, and no need to spend thousands of dollars for the burial of your loved ones.
You're absolutely correct. I've had a family that put their loved one on a table out on the porch of my home while they dug the grave, and then they played music from their phone onto a speaker, and then carried their mother out to the grave site, lowered her into the grave, and covered it. And these can be very raw. You know, if you're used to going to a funeral and you don't see a body because it's in this closed casket, you will see a body wrapped in a shroud, and you'll see the outline of a body. It brings it home so closely that I think it's kind of like a smack up beside the head to realize they are gone. And many places I've read that it helps with the grieving process. Now, not everybody. Some people still have the phobia about death. I'm not recommending that you force someone to do something they're not comfortable with, but I think it brings a great deal of that grief forward. It seems that at the closing of the grave is when the emotion really hits. It's almost like, you know, it really is the end for them. So that is my personal belief, and I hope to share that belief and have people look at it as an alternative way to a traditional funeral.
And it is interesting to think about bringing families together through death, because sometimes that's not what happens. It can be very complicated for families, and it can create a lot of division in families. But what you're talking about is making this a family function, being able to grieve and mourn in a very natural way.
Exactly. You're not in a facility where you feel somewhat confined to your emotions, if you will, or trying to control your emotions. It does get very raw and very real. I do promote pre-planning. It absolutely needs to be pre-planned. I try to manage expectations. I like people to come out and visit before they decide or before their loved one passes if they can, because I've had a family come out thinking this is what they wanted to do with family members that hadn't been included to begin with. And at the end, they changed their mind because not everybody was on board. So it is different. It is a learning process. Every funeral, actually, in my opinion, should be pre-planned when they can. It is really necessary when you're not expecting what's going to happen. The majority of people buried here are out in a wooded area. It's not a traditional cemetery where you're going to see grass and traditional headstones, the polished marble and granite. The few headstones out here, there are just a couple that are rocks, just pieces of rock that have been engraved, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful, and they're out in the woods where there may be a deer, a raccoon, armadillo, snake, anything out there may go by your grave. it's just an experience that you can't imagine until you've seen it.
Right now, we're talking with Shelia Champion. She is a member of the National Home Funeral Alliance and the owner of the Good Earth LLC in Hazel Green, Alabama. We are trying to bring information forward that maybe you didn't know about. And the Good Earth LLC was formed to educate, empower, and encourage people to take control of the bodies of their loved ones at the time of death. Sheila, I hope you'll stick with me as we continue to have this conversation about the Good Earth LLC and then how people can connect with you, okay?
Absolutely.
I hope that you'll continue to listen as I talk to Shelia Champion with the Good Earth LLC. Maybe we're bringing up some information that you didn't know about. I didn't know about it. And so I reached out to Sheila and I said, let's have a conversation and let's talk about this natural way of burying our loved ones. I hope you'll stick with us during this conversation. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Mark White Show, and I'm your host, Mark White.
Something good today. A little wink, a pat on the back, a big old hug, a little laugh. We can make a difference. All we have to do is try. Yeah, every day's a chance to change somebody else's life. Let's all do something good today.
Mr. Cecil Batchelor is the one that started this business as Dependable Service Center. And even though now it's Green's Dependable Hardware and we're a True Value store, our tagline is still Your Dependable Service Center. We've tried to keep that alive for all these years. Mr. Batchelor really started a good business. We're really excited to be carrying on a long-standing tradition. It's the oldest retail store in the city of Russellville. We're Green's Dependable Hardware, 15220A Highway 43 in Russellville, Alabama. We're right behind McDonald's or right across the street from the hospital. Number is 256-331-0123.
Your Dependable Service Center.
Do you look at your home or business and wonder what you can do when it comes to landscapes or hardscapes? Get in touch with my friends at JJ Brothers Hardscapes and Landscapes. Licensed, bonded, and insured, JJ Brothers Hardscapes and Landscapes offers new sod, irrigation, new flower beds, new mulch, blocks, stone, retaining walls, patios, and outdoor kitchens. Give JJ a call at 256-497-8263 or email at jjhardscapes@gmail.com. Now offering pool remodeling and new installs. That's JJ Brothers Hardscapes and Landscapes. Located in Tuscumbia, Alabama, the Alabama Music Hall of Fame honors Alabama's music achievers. You can even go into the recording studio and try out your talents as a singer. That's the Alabama Music Hall of Fame, located at 617 Highway 72 West in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Give them a call at 256-381-4417. Check them out on the web at alamhof.org. Thompson Roofing and Construction is a locally owned family business serving the North Alabama and Southern Tennessee area. They are a Better Business Bureau A+ member since 2011 and a GAF Master Elite Contractor. Give them a call at 256-952-3309 or check them out on the web at 256roofing.com. They offer free inspections.
Thompson Roofing and Construction.
Is it time for a haircut? Go see my friends Philip Butler and B.H. Parker at Southwind Barbershop, located at 1637 Lee Street in Rogersville, Alabama. Give them a call at 256-247-5658. That's 256-247-5658.
Hi, I'm Crystal Gale, and you're listening to The Mark White Show. And one smile can make a difference. Na 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 na. Someone loves you, I do.
To the city, works extra hard all day.
ashes of Burley so he can get away. 'Cause there's a blue-eyed kid on second base, wants Dad to watch him play. Daddy knows he's
Welcome back to the Mark White Show. We have Shelia Champion with us. She is with The Good Earth, LLC in Hazel Green, Alabama. Welcome back to the Mark White Show, Sheila.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You know, some people who are listening right now, this is the first time that they've heard about this natural burial. Some people are wondering, well, how is this legal? We were talking earlier about the fact that you helped to change the laws here in the state of Alabama.
That's right, Mark. When I started the business, there was a law in Alabama that said only Alabama licensed funeral directors could sell funeral merchandise in Alabama. Funeral merchandise being vaults, caskets, shrouds, urns. And fortunately, I found a nonprofit legal firm called the Institute for Justice. They're located in the Virginia, D.C. area. And they took my case. There was another law that said every funeral, interment, or memorial service had to be under the direct supervision and management of an Alabama licensed funeral director. So this attorney group helped me, and we got those two laws changed, which means that now families are allowed to care for their own at the time of death. They do not have to use a funeral home. There are ways to do the death certificate without a funeral home. You just have to work with a cemetery authority that will allow you to bury someone yourself. Cemeteries have rules. They don't have laws pertaining to this instance. And now artisans in Alabama can make their own shrouds or urns or whatever. And I have a lady and her son-in-law who make caskets for me that are just a plain pine box. And now it's legal for them to sell them in Alabama. And there are other artisans that can do the same. So it's opened up freedom of economic liberty, which is what the Institute for Justice actually sued the state on, and then they changed their mind real quick. So those laws have changed. Now it is perfectly legal in any place in the entire state of Alabama to care for your own at the time of death. The only exception would be if the body contains some very viral bacteria. This does not include COVID. It does not include AIDS or HIV. It would only be something as rare as Ebola. To take care of your own loved one if they should have AIDS or HIV or COVID, you would only use the same protective gear that you used before they passed. The body's not going to turn into some bacteria-riddled object that's going to make everyone sick. So if you use gloves and a mask before they died, you'd use gloves and a mask after they died. So it's not as scary as everyone thinks. And it, as I said earlier, it really brings families together. And I think it's a great idea. I'll be buried green. I actually live at the cemetery, and I'll be buried here too.
We don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
Something new, something that's presented to us that's different. Sometimes we start to challenge that. And one of the things that people may challenge is the subject of decomposition. What happens to a body when it is put into the earth green as opposed to being embalmed, preserving a body through, say, a casket or a vault, and thinking that that protects a loved one or does something while they're in the ground to protect their body indefinitely.
Right. There's no way to protect a body indefinitely. Now, no one's going to go dig up a body to see that, but there are studies and articles that show how decomposition works better naturally in the ground, and people have said, "Ooh, I don't want bugs around me," and I'm thinking, you don't even know what's around you in a casket. People can actually Google and find examples of mausoleums leaking body fluid, because if you put a closed casket that doesn't have a vent of some type in it, actual body fluids can run down the front of the mausoleum or the back and cause odors and things you don't really want to see. There was an episode of that happening in Coleman, Alabama. You can Google that and find Coleman, Alabama leaking mausoleum. The natural way is the way we were meant to go. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust.
When we think about the vault itself, and a lot of people have a misconception about the vault, what the benefit of having a more expensive vault, and it's not an attack on any vault maker or anyone who's in that business, but just to lay out the facts that I believe you said the Federal Trade Commission, a person can't even say that a casket is leak-proof or waterproof under the FTC rules.
That's exactly right. The FTC funeral rules state that no manufacturer or user of a vault or a casket can maintain that it will never leak. Eventually, everything rusts out or wood will go away. Eventually, it will leak. Now, it might be in 100 years or it might be in 10 days. You don't know this. So the only reason for a vault is for the cemetery to mow the grass, basically, to do their cemetery maintenance and make it more level. Now, you may be told that that vault protects the casket, and I guess for a while it might protect the casket, but if you stop and think about it, why do you want to protect a casket to begin with? It's nothing that you're going to preserve that body for, like the Egyptians mummified. That's not the case. So if you just put some logical thought into it, you're not doing anything to benefit or to change the fact that the person is deceased. They are meant to decompose and go back into the earth instead of being in this container, I guess you would say. Of course, that's a personal opinion. You're going to have people probably through the funeral industry tell you that it's much nicer to preserve that pretty oak box that you bought. In truth, you can't claim that it will never leak.
Every funeral I've ever gone to, once the casket was covered in dirt, the vault was covered in dirt, I've never seen it again. Exactly.
My point. My dad was died and buried 11 years ago in a little town in Kansas. His funeral was $12,500, which my dad could afford. That money could have gone to help someone else, in my opinion, better. Had the vault, oak casket like my mother had years before, and that was fine. That's what he wanted, and that's what they bought. They didn't know any different, and I didn't have the business back then. But to me, it's such a waste of money and resources, so much hardwood and metal and embalming fluid go into the earth every year that it's really more harmful. I've had people ask, well, won't a decomposing body contaminate the water? No, it won't. It's buried and there's no embalming fluid. Embalming fluid will contaminate the water. Another misconception, Mark, is that you're buried 6 feet deep. It shows 6 feet under, and you always hear the term 6 feet under. That is a misnomer. People buried naturally out here, you have, by guidelines of the state, as well as a lot of the country, 18 to 24 inches of soil over the body. I had a burial this weekend. The body was wrapped in a shroud. We went 3 feet deep just to make sure that there was enough soil to cover the body. That breaks the scent barrier so animals will not disturb the grave. So it's not 6 feet under.
My dad, 5 years ago this time, was planning his funeral, and one of the things that he talked about, and he said, you know, anything that you spend goes in the ground with me. He said, so y'all can spend it or you can save it. That's your choice. And he really did have that attitude about it. Now, we didn't talk about a green burial at that time. We didn't really know anything different. Like I said, this is all new to me too with what you're doing, Sheila, through the Good Earth. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there is an option out there, that this is a legal option, and that people can save thousands of dollars, because I know how many families have struggled to try to pay for very expensive funerals, and I know that they're doing the very best they can for the person that they love with the information that's before them. And I just wanted to make sure that people had this information today so that when they look at that $7,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 that potentially goes towards a funeral which goes into the ground, they can actually save money and still show that they cared about the person that they lost.
Exactly. And to me, to see these funerals I have, you see the love so much. As I said before, it's raw, but you're actually involved in it, and the last loving act you can give your loved one.
Sheila, I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you through the Good Earth LLC. That's kind of the point here. I want people to be able to connect with you and find out more information so that they have all the tools and all the resources. Any questions that they have can be answered. I'm sure that you are in a very good position to do that. So if you would share with listeners how they can connect with you.
All right. I'm very happy to do so, and you don't have to be buried here to ask me questions. I get a lot of questions, and I'm happy to answer them. My phone number at the Good Earth is 256-655-2170. You can also email me at Sheila, that's Shelia, at thegoodearthllc.com. My webpage is thegoodearthllc.com. Any way you can reach out to me, and again, I'll answer questions about traditional funerals, what's legal, what's not legal, and if I don't know, I'll get you an answer.
Sheila, I think that we'll probably have more conversations in the future, but I really appreciate your time today to share about the Good Earth LLC and Green Burial that you are really spearheading here in the state of Alabama and making a difference when it comes to how families can have another option to bury their loved ones.
Thank you so much. It is truly an act of love. It is not for money. It is an act of love, and it is a very rewarding business for me to do. I love helping the families.
That's wonderful to hear. We've been talking to Shelia Champion with the Good Earth LLC in Hazel Green, Alabama. Just like she said, her job here, she formed the Good Earth LLC, to educate, empower, and encourage people to take control of the bodies of their loved ones at the time of death. We care about those that we love, and we want to take care of them, and we want to do the right thing. And this is just another option for you. So I want you to reach out to Sheila if you have any questions, if this is something that you might want to consider for your loved one. She's already expressed the importance of pre-planning. So make sure that you go ahead and have these plans already together. This is what you want to do, just like you do for your will. Any other thing that you have that you plan before your death, you make those plans and you say, okay, this is how I want my wishes carried out. Sheila will be more than happy to answer those questions. So thank you again, Sheila.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Mark.
Folks, Shelia Champion with the Good Earth LLC in Hazel Green, Alabama. Here on the Mark White Show, we're recognizing difference makers like Shelia Champion. We're glad to have people like that on the Mark White Show to share their expertise, their knowledge, and to educate you as a listener. I'm educated every single time. I hope that you'll share the show with your family, your friends, and your neighbors, and let them know about the Mark White Show and what we're doing to make a difference in our communities, not just in the state of Alabama, but across the country and around the world. You can follow the Mark White Show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and subscribe to the Mark White Show podcast via Apple iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Audio Boom, SoundCloud, Blueberry, YouTube, and TuneIn Radio. You have been listening to another edition of the Mark White Show, and this is Mark White, encouraging you to find your purpose by making a difference in someone's life today.
Who live and love in my hometown. These are my kind of people.
Boutique Air in Muscle Shoals, Alabama offers direct flights to Atlanta and Pensacola. Boutique Air service runs twice daily, 7 days a week, with fares starting at $59. Follow Boutique Air Muscle Shoals on Facebook at Boutique Air MSL and book your flight through boutiqueair.com. Boutique Air,
where you can fly private for the cost of commercial.
Don't just throw a tailgate, own the tailgate with a Bojangles Big Bow Box. Because only Bojangles puts tailgate-ready fresh, never frozen, honey barbecue or buffalo bone-in wings with fall-off-the-bone juiciness right in the pocket. The only way to make these wings any better? With some made-from-scratch buttery biscuits, flavorful fixins, and freshly steeped legendary iced tea. So let the quarterback do the throwing, you do the winning. Because how can you expect to win the game if you don't win the tailgate? Bojangles, it's bow time.
Oh, won't you hear me, people, when I say, well, let's all do something good today.